Mike Reese here for Martial Arts Chat. I just did 2 videos for the Ultimate Fighter Season 22. So if you can, check those out. But right now I'm going to do a martial arts chat this time. And mainly it's basically a topic I brought up on my Tactical Fighting Strategies page on Facebook. And what it was, it's about kind of like my opinion, how I've kind of had to sit down and look at MMA, self-defense, traditional martial arts, you want to call them traditional or just classical, whatever you want to call them. The guys that wear the uniforms and all that stuff compared to the people that don't, ultimately. But where do I, what's really my stance? Because as a kid, I got brought up in, more classical martial arts and traditional martial arts, and I've worked with those, and I've loved those, and really honestly they still work as a great foundation for me today. But then of course we have the self-defense aspect, which I'm very much into that self-defense aspect, and then you're looking at different arts, in my opinion, for that, which you got Kali, you got Silat, you got other things that have a little more weapon base onto it, and they're a little more combative because of that. They're more into that zone of actual combative type fighting, into lethal options, and for that kind of thing. And I started getting into that a lot, but I still was working with different martial arts all over the place. And then we have Krav Maga, and also in the self-defense area. And then there's a lot of people that they use simplified moves from regular martial arts as their self-defense thing. And then of course we have the MMA guys who are, it's basically your boxers, boxing and wrestling, kickboxing and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and of course you have some martial artists that are in there that from different backgrounds, like Kyokushin and Shotokan, Taekwondo and things of that nature. But ultimately the reason why they went into MMA was to continue that competition, but that full contact competition style of fighting, as well as the fact that they didn't, when they looked at their art, they didn't feel like their art was ultimately the best thing for them. And so these factions, these 3 factions always seem to be arguing who's the best, and who's got the stuff that actually works, and does that really work, and does that really work? Nah, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. Everybody's talking about what doesn't work for each style. Even if they've never practiced it, they say it doesn't work. That's just ego, okay? That is complete ego. And all 3 have that ego. And it's because they truly believe in what they do. And there's nothing wrong with believing in what you do. If you believe in what you do, you're going to go after it, and you're going to strive, and you're going to thrive and get better, and you'll be better than a lot of people in that area. And that's not a bad thing. That's just what you do. But I'm just here to kind of counter, man. MMA uses Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling and boxing. You can use all that stuff for self-defense. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has its own self-defense portion. Muay Thai has always had a different portion for itself for self-defense for actual street fights. So don't say that it won't work in the street. It will work in the street. But guys, don't say Taekwondo, Shotokan, Kyokushin, any of these other type of forms that can do strikes. Don't say that won't work in the cage or for self-defense. Because some people say it's not for self-defense, because those are the same things. You still use the same stuff they use in the cage. You still punch, kick, elbow, knee. They have the same things. Now they might address it differently, or they might show it different. It might look different, but it's not different. It's the same thing. A kick is a kick, a knee is a knee, an elbow is an elbow, a punch is a punch. That's how it works. So if you get away from all the aspects of, well, that's a karate-styled punch. Is it a punch? It's a punch. If I know how to deliver that punch in a fight, it doesn't make it any less effective than your punch. If I know how to get it there, It doesn't matter if I'm doing a reverse punch or if I'm doing a boxing jab or cross or a hook. None of that matters. If I'm making contact and actually getting injury with it, then it works. Okay? Self-defense, guys. I really wish you guys would quit thinking that you do something so different. You guys do something so different than everyone else. You're using the same methods as everyone else, but you're just also showing to fight dirty and to do that. That's awesome. Fight dirty in a street fight. That has no bearing or not, whether or not you're too dangerous for a cage fight or anything. I don't think that even makes a difference. Don't say you're too dangerous for a cage fight. Just say you don't do cage competition. Just say, I'm not a competition guy. I don't focus on that. I don't want to focus on fighting for a cage or match or anything like that. And guys, MMA guys, quit saying it doesn't work just because it's not in the MMA. That's bunk. That's garbage. Just because you're not facing off with someone, that doesn't make a difference. Because it's a totally different environment. The one thing that separates all three of these factions, self-defense, MMA, and traditional martial arts, the one thing that separates all of them is really honestly the mindset. It's the mindset behind your training. It's the mindset of what you're going into battle for. Are you going into combat sport? Then your mindset's going to be just a tad bit different than the guy that's just preparing for that life or death situation. And it's just always gonna be different. Your mindset is preparing for different moments, and that's the whole thing. Do I teach? Pulling hair, kicking in the groin, and clawing out faces. Little girls do that when they're in kindergarten. They don't need training for that. But now, can I show you how to do it appropriately and actually how to cause actual trauma with it even better? Yeah, I can do that. But at the same time, do you need to do that to actually hurt someone or get the distraction you need to escape? No, you don't. But that's self-defense. You're just trying to escape. You're trying to survive and to get away. Combat, you're trying to kill your other opponent, so none of your stuff, hand-to-hand, should ever come into play unless it's absolutely the last thing that you have. You should be utilizing weapons at all times when it comes to actual combat. And everything you have for hand-to-hand should go right back into accessing a weapon. Because either that or you're going to get this person killed. When it's competition sport, of course you're not going to kick the groin and stuff because it will injure that person. And of course it's not considered a fair fight, but that's the only way you're going to get a fair fight is when you're in a ring. Every other place else, it's not fair anyway. But let's look at it this way. Traditional guys, you guys spar. Do you injure yourselves every single time? Do you gouge the eyes of the guy that's, is that how you spar? No, it's not how you spar. So you could ultimately take your stuff into the ring if you really wanted to. You choose not to. Just say you choose not to. You don't have to prove yourself to these guys on the keyboards that say, well, it just doesn't this. It doesn't matter. Has it worked for you? If it has, boom, it works for you. Who cares? It doesn't matter what they say. It matters what it happens. And that's why I think it annoys me when I get a lot of people say, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. And, I've heard people say that about Aikido and Aiki Jiu-Jitsu. And it's like, well, if it doesn't work, then why has it worked for me? Well, what situation were you in? Well, the guy was throwing a punch, but I knew how to move away from that situation and how to get the lock. Why? Because I trained that. My mindset is trained to know how to find the lock that I need, or the placement I need, and how to do it. It's the way we go about our training. Am I going to try to muscle or outshoot or double leg takedown or try to arm lock or get a wrist lock onto a wrestler? You're out of your mind. No way. I'm going to move. They shoot. I'm going to do the best I can to move. If they still catch me, then I'm going to do what I can to prevent them to be able to pick up my legs and drop me. And if not, I better have something on the floor to be able to know what to do. And that's the thing. I've fought wrestlers. I've fought boxers. I've fought people that know martial arts like Taekwondo. I've fought people that have, MMA backgrounds. Does it mean that I didn't win? Of course it doesn't. I did, but it doesn't mean I won by their ruling in their mind. Their mindset was different than mine. That's the difference. If I'm getting in the cage, it's someone that should be close to my weight or my weight. And we are now equals in this position, and it's just one-on-one combat with skills that we should be equal to, or at least that's how it's supposed to be seen. And now we fight. We know each other. We know what we can do because we've watched highlight reels. We've been watching their fights. We've been studying them, so we know who they are. We know their tactics. So what we're going to do, we're going to try to fight it out, knowing each other out. It's mutual combat. You can get in mutual combat situations. I mean, if you're drunk in the bar and you're an MMA fighter and the drunk in the bar tries to bash this guy in the head, of course this MMA fighter is going to just run him all over. Jiu-Jitsu, though, what has it done lately? It's helped an airman save people. It's helped people try to get robbed. But you know what they've done? The same thing that I usually did when I was working in correctional stuff and security, when you have to actually grab someone and get your arm locks in and stuff like that. I've not studied Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've worked with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I've studied Jiu-Jitsu, Aikido Jiu-Jitsu, and Aikido. And I've actually worked with that actual aspect. I've actually trained in those aspects, and that's what got me into be able to move out of the way, get the lock I needed, and be able to restrain. You know, it didn't matter where I studied or what I trained. People just like to hype it. It's the fact that I got the job done. Okay? So, and I'm going to always say, and when it comes to a fight, you're not fighting for anything more than the very moment of when you can win. And that's a fraction of time that you're going to be able to find that moment. And you might miss that window. But that's what you're training for, is the moment. You're training for that moment in time. And so your mindset is going to be different when you do these three. It's always just the mindset. You should be able to transfer traditional martial arts into self-defense, and then you could also be able to use it for cage fighting if you want to do that. All these things should be used for want to. But now here's my question for a lot of you guys. Now if we think about it, should every martial art have a self-defense aspect? Because ultimately, it used to be, I don't think the statistics are that way anymore, but it used to be the majority of people who would go into a karate school would be looking for self-defense. So in my opinion, everything should have a self-defense aspect. And ultimately they all can, but it's how you train it, it's how you teach it. It has nothing to do with anything not working or working. It's how you train it. Train it to work then. If you don't think it's going to work, train it to work, because it will work, because there's ways to make it work. So let's just discuss this, guys. What do you guys think? Do you think everything should have a self-defense? Like every martial art should have a self-defense style, a self-defense aspect to it? And should anything be able to work in the cage? Do you believe you should be able to use anything you know and work it in the cage? And answer this honestly, guys. I mean, really look into this. Do you really think that you're too dangerous? Obviously, I'm not taking Kali knives and sticks into a cage match. Yet, I can still take their hand. I can still take their hand-to-hand skills in there. Is it done? No, because a lot of people don't think about it. So just put it out there, guys. And we'll just talk about this a little bit more, and I'll come back on here and see what we got to talk about a little bit. We'll see what happens with the comments. So I'll talk to you guys later, see what you guys have. Later.